So, good afternoon. It's Saturday the 23rd of August 2025 and I'm here in Sheffield city centre. Basically, this is the heart of the city of Sheffield. This is where Sheffield first, shall we say, grew from. This location. So this is the site of Sheffield Castle. By the way, it's around about 1:45 in the afternoon. The temperature's about 20 Celsius. It's quite overcast and grey today. So appropriate, I thought, for coming down and making it's not really a response video to where the kite. I think the YouTube channel is Where the Kite Lands. It's not really an exact response to their concerns about Sheffield, because I'm here on a Saturday. So the discussion has been about why Sheffield seems to be so deserted compared to similar sized cities, and I've given quite a few reasons for that. So I'm here on a Saturday, so you can't really compare a Saturday, which is obviously going to be quite busy in Sheffield, with, say, somewhere like Leicester on a Wednesday afternoon. This is more a case of understanding Sheffield historically and the layout of the city as it's grown over the Victorian era, and why some of the mistakes that have been made really since the 1950s have meant that Sheffield is very much a kind of, you can see is quite, in certain parts, not well cared for, not looked after. There's not a lot of civic pride here anymore, whereas once there used to be. And I want to discuss that a little bit, as well as just basically walking through historically the main retail area of the city, and understanding how and why the city developed as it did, and why the retail offer in the city historically, not now because things are changing and that's part of the problem, but historically why the city centre is laid out as it is. So as I said, we're at the castle. We're at the heart of where Sheffield developed. So this is the Sheffield Castle site. You've got the old town hall from 1808 there. The new town hall, will go past that later on, is further up in the city centre. So historically, this is the northern side of the city centre. You've got the canal basin just down there, so that leads down to the lower Don Valley. So basically, anybody who wanted to come into the city centre and shop from the north of the city, that's the northwest, places like Hillsborough and Stannington and Wadsley and Stocksbridge and Uterbridge, as well as the north of the city, all the council estates up there, Parson Cross, Southey, High Green, Chapeltown, and the northeast of the city, the more industrial areas. They will come down here to shop. They will come and shop in the Castle Market here, which used to be on this site, the site of the old castle. Or they would shop in the Sheaf Market, which was, I think, this site here. And there was also, I think, an open air market, I think, that was somewhere down there. And before Park Square Roundabout was built, the actual market hall there was absolutely stunningly beautiful. But I'm not sure if that got bombed in World War II. I'm just seeing if there's a picture of it here. No, can't see it. I think there might be down there. So basically, this is the main shopping area in the city for people travelling from the north of the city. So if you think buses will come up here, and they would also come down here from the bus station and the railway station, which is just over there, just beyond where it says, just beyond Fitzallen Square there, which is just beyond Castlegate, the bridge there. So let's walk up and see how by moving the markets from here over to the moor, which is what happened several years ago, has left this area basically in the state that it is. You can see that there is a lack of importance in the historic fabric. You had a lovely old Tudor fronted, it was a mock Tudor building, but it was still a lovely old Tudor fronted building there that nobody looked after and was just allowed to be demolished. And one of the main talking points I want to say and make out is that if you go from being a somewhere place to an anywhere place, then you end up pretty much looking like this. And what do I mean by that? I mean that at the time that a city grew and became important and built so many buildings, whatever era that is, if you don't protect that historic fabric, then you lose that somewhere. You don't necessarily have to protect all the industry that came with that building, with all those buildings, with all those developments. But if you don't at least protect the historic fabric, and you don't recognise the importance of that historic fabric, then you become just an anywhere place, because you can knock anything down at any time and build anything in any period, in any era, that has no connection really to any major historical growth of that city. So for example, I always say Bath. I always give the example of Bath. Bath is the finest Georgian city in this country. And so the vast majority of it was built during Georgian times. What they haven't done since Georgian times is demolished all those Georgian buildings and replaced them with more modern buildings, whether it's Victorian, whether it's with Edwardian. Obviously there are Victorian and Edwardian buildings in Bath, but though they tend to be add-ons to the fabric that was already there. The problem with a city like Sheffield, the combination of Hitler's bombing in World War II, which took away a lot of buildings around this part of the town, and then the kind of modernist nightmare that developed from the 50s and 60s onwards, where, you know, shall we say, for want of a better term, the elite were going to tell people how they were going to live in the future, rather than allowing people to decide how they want to live in the future. So you create modern developments that are in fashion for a few years and then become derelict, whether those modern buildings are flats, or tower blocks, or office buildings, or whatever. And then people lose interest because there is no historical connection with the past. And then you end up with urban blight like this. Because the only reason for these buildings to be here is for commercial reasons. The city grew, yes, for commercial reasons, but there were local reasons, i.e. there was coal, there was steel, there were fast-flowing rivers, there was millstone grit. There were good economic resources here, which meant that this city grew because of those economic resources. And they were based here. They weren't imported from abroad, they weren't brought in. They were the resources that were used, which enabled the city to grow organically at that time. And so you have all this wonderful, I always say that if you look at Sheffield prior to World War II, you know, you look at the buildings and you put aside the obvious dirt and the obvious grime on the buildings from all the coal fires that were being burnt and all the industry pumping out pollution at that time. The actual buildings themselves were the most beautiful, the most impressive Victorian landscape in England. Without a shadow of a doubt, I would now give that Victorian legacy to the city of Bradford, if I have to give it to anybody. Bradford, like Sheffield, grew in the Victorian era. And I don't think Bradford got bombed anywhere near, if at all, as much as Sheffield did. So basically, protect your historic fabric, and if it gets bombed in World War II, rebuild it as it used to be, because that's what links you to your past. The reality is simple. The past history of a place is not something different to where you are now, and the future isn't something different either. It works on a continuum. The present links the past with the future. So it's a continuum. And so just to bring it back to more a local issue here. So we have the tram that was put in the 90s, right? Tram system put in the 90s. Most of it that I'm absolutely happy with. But you put a tram system in, which basically follows a lot of the lines, or some of the lines of the old tram system, pre-1960s. But as you put in this line in to bring people to the market area, you then close the markets down and move the markets down to the bottom of the moor, which don't have a tram connection. Now, if that's decent planning, if that's good joined up thinking, I'll eat my hat, basically, because clearly it's not. So the fact that there is, and we'll come to the moor obviously later on, the fact that there is a market on the moor is nothing new. There has always been a market on the moor, but the market that's there now is really quite small and insignificant compared to the markets that used to be down here, as well as the outdoor market that used to and still is on the moor. But yeah, so we've just come up from Castlegate market area. So as I said, the most important, the number one shopping offer in Sheffield historically has always been from the markets up to High Street here, because it's easily connected down to the bus station down there. That's Fitzallen Square, which again is not really a major shopping area. But you've got Commercial Street down there, and this is the bottom of High Street. So High Street, you used to have CNA on the end here. That used to be House of Fraser. You can see now there's Poundland and a Lidl in there. Before Hitler's bombs destroyed that used to be Marples, and the architecture there was absolutely stunning. Please Google Marples building. And also, if you look at the building that used to be where the House of Fraser was, the Walsh's building, again was bombed. It was an absolutely stunning Victorian building. But of course, we didn't build back the somewhere place, the place that people have a connection with. We built back an anywhere place, a building that you could get and you can see absolutely anywhere in any city throughout the world, really. So there is a much less of an emotional connection, objectively, with a building like that than, say, with the old Walsh's building. So this is the old CNA building. Over there used to be an Argos in there. Now it looks like it's a kind of 10-pin bowl inside. So this is basically Castle Square. So this in the 60s became a major thoroughfare as they put a dual carriageway right through the city centre, basically splitting, making it more difficult to get from the railway station and the bus station up into the city. That's probably going to be downgraded at some point, I would think. So here we've got proposals, right, to build some kind of tower. Right, okay. Yeah, that is on this side, because there's Castle House, which used to house the co-op. So just like people used to come up from maybe the northeast of the city, where we've just come from down there on Castle Gate, from the northeast of the city, they used to come up Castle Gate, Haymarket, up there, it's where B&M is. People from the northwest used to come up here. So this was two-way, just like that used to be two-way. But now buses do a kind of loop around from the northeast and the northwest of the city. So again, all this area was kind of bombed really in World War II, which is why you've got a lot of really modernist garbage now. So yeah, so I'm just going to wander up here. So Greg's got several Gregs, you'll notice, on the way up. Just come over here. You can see it's in the right state. Nobody's coming out cleaning this, except for maybe once a day or once every couple of days. We've got a Wetherspoons, we've got Banker's Draft. There's a major Wetherspoons there. So this is where you come up. So if you live in the north of the city, you would shop down at the markets or on Haymarket or at the bottom end of High Street, or maybe come up here, which is the main part of High Street. Now this, and going onto Fargate left, is and was the major shopping streets, or are the major shopping streets in Sheffield. But at some point, I think in the 90s, they wanted to make the major shopping street, which it is not, has never been, and will never be, because it's on the very edge of the city centre. What we're doing now is we're heading up very close to the centre of the city that really developed in the kind of mid to late Victorian era. So we're on High Street, so this used to be a massive shops. Walsh's used to be along there. I'm not exactly sure of the position, but it was a beautiful Victorian building that really carried the line of that building there. So if you look at that building there, try and forget the graffiti. Disgusting, dirty people touching things that they don't own. I'd have them in prison for a very, very long time. But beautiful bit of Victoriana. And then we've got these horrendous run-down concrete monstrosities that struggle to get people in them. We've got a Wendy's there. It's quite new. Again, one of the problems was when this tram was built, which I'm actually all for, but this made High Street a one-way system for buses only. So instantly you're cutting down, you're halving the number of buses, and the tram doesn't go to every part of Sheffield, it only goes to a small part of Sheffield. If it went to virtually every part of Sheffield, then it may be acceptable to have High Street and Church Street, which is there, as just a one-way for buses. But it doesn't. The tram only goes so far. And whereas on here, there's supposed to be buses that go throughout the city. So if you've got a reduced capacity to take buses here, as well as this now becoming pretty much taxi only, you know, if you have your own private car, I don't think you can come up here. I'm not sure. Just looking at the signs there. Then again, you're limited as to the number of people that get off. So if you look at old pictures of this area, at any time of year, there will be masses of buses on here. Again, okay, lots of pollution back then, but now we have electric buses. Excuse me. So congestion is not the issue that it used to be. If every bus and every tram coming up and down here, if you brought this back to two-way, was electric, then you've not got a problem with pollution, especially if the source of that electricity is also renewable. So we've got, and again, this wasn't a bombing from Hitler. This was a Sheffield City Council ridiculous decision to demolish the old Coles Corner. So if you've heard anything about Sheffield, if you're into Richard Hawley, he's got a song that talks about Coles Corner. That was where Coles Corner was. It was a fantastic historical meeting point, excuse me, for many people in Sheffield. It's where Cole Brothers used to be before it moved up to Barker's Pool. And they knocked the old building down and they replaced it with that pile of shit. And I'm not going to apologise for using that language because it's just disgusting. The Coles building, if you look from this position on the internet and you look at the old Coles building, it's a beautiful continuation of the Cutler's Hall there, just going across, absolutely fantastic. So we come up to the cathedral, the Anglican Cathedral. So again, it's a few people about. You wouldn't expect to see lots of people on here at any time unless there are events happening. Not a shopping area really. The main shopping area, the number one shopping area, as you can see, because there's the Boots there. You got McDonald's, you got an HMV, got Cafe Nero, you got a Boots Opticians, and of course you've got your Marks and Spencer. So you got your Marks and Spencer. You used to have Next up there, which is no longer there. You got another Greggs here. You got Burger King in this horrible building. So you can see how this is, again, this used to be a two-way system with buses and trams coming up and down here. Now it's very much pedestrianised. You've got the latest kind of grey to green development here. So again, you've got the refurbishment of that horrendous, pretty bog standard building there. But this one that's beautiful and ornate seems to be just left to go derelict. And of course down there you've got the historic Chapel Walk, which again has been left to go downhill. There always seems to be some kind of scheme to bring it back into usage. But again, this used to be a major small shopping area of Independence that leads you down to the Crucible and the Lyceum Theatre. So, I won't talk about the developments on Fargate at the moment, but you can see, I mean, we're out Saturday afternoon. It is obviously bustling. That's not the point of this video. But what I want to do is so this was the number one street in Sheffield historically for shopping. The Moor never came close to it. Never came close to it. Until the Moor went into private hands, and then of course they wanted as much of the footfall in Sheffield as possible. However, as I said earlier on, there is no tram that services the Moor. So it's ridiculous. So actually you've got the tram here which services Fargate and High Street, and yet you take all your major shopping and you move it down to the Moor and you hand it over to a private company Don't get me wrong, I'm all for, wherever possible, private organisations to run private institutions, not running public institutions, but running private institutions. I'm all for that. Not as an absolutist thing, but on the whole, that's what I think should happen. But you also have to look at things practically. We've got a tram system in place. You want your main shopping system, your main shopping area to be on the tram route. And so what did they do? They moved it all down to the moor, which is just about as far away from in the city centre from the tram route as you can imagine. So it's coming up to Church Street now. So there's a nice little artisan coffee shop there. We've got a Tesco Express in this. There's a Cutler's Hall. Beautiful and ornate inside, absolutely wonderful. Here we've got a Tesco Express. So you got some nice units there. This used to be the old stone house. Not sure what it is now, if anything. And again, it's another thing without wanting to get really political, but when you have an increase in the population of people who do not drink or go out to pubs or go to nightclubs, and a decrease in population of people who historically have gone out to nightclubs and bars and pubs, then is it any wonder that a lot of bars and pubs and nightclubs close down? And that's it, all I'm going to say on that at the moment. So we just look back down Church Street towards High Street down there. So this is the other major, almost kind of mini Arndale centre, shall we say, is how I like to think of it, in Sheffield city centre, which is Orchard Square, a kind of quite quaint 1980s style. Can I go through? Yeah, cheers, thank you. Quite a quaint 1980s take on a kind of traditional English shopping square, which I think actually works quite well, and is really quite pretty. It's got its own little clock tower there. We've got a Subway, we've got the Old Shoe, a nice eatery there, we've got Waterstones, obviously TK Maxx there. Got a TK Maxx, got Waterstones with a cafe up there. Another pub there, the museum. And we've got craft workshops up there. We've got a Costa, we've got small shops that side, some small shops this side. Over there we've got Leopold Street and Leopold Square, that's quite upmarket for eating out, especially in the evening. You go through there, that leads to West Street, which we won't be walking along today because West Street is very much kind of nighttime economy, lots of students, etc. as that heads up towards the University of Sheffield. So yeah, you can see all of these pretty much are let. I think it's just this one here, is it? Is this let? Bubble tea open, yeah, the door's open. Yeah. And then this brings you out as we go past Metro Bank here and Virgin Money there, which I think really aren't the best establishments for this site, but at least they're obviously paying rent and business taxes, hopefully. So we're here at the top of Fargate. So, big open space now at the top of Fargate, so we can put on events here. The old Yorkshire Bank still waiting to be let, and a few to let signs here. Been a lot of work on here that has been problematic, but it's getting there, so hopefully that will start to trigger more people to come in and set up businesses. And then Surrey Street. Now, I'm not sure if I'm going to do another video, but most people who come into the city centre from the railway station, they come up Howard Street and they cross over Arundel Gate and then come straight up Surrey Street, or go through the Winter Gardens and the Millennium Gallery first, and then the Winter Gardens into the city centre. Nobody that I ever know walks up Howard Street from the bus station and turns left to head down to the moor. That is the most strange route to get into Sheffield city centre that I've ever come across. This is the main centre. Just down there you've got the library, and to the left you've got the Lyceum and Crucible Theatre. Just down there, just zoom in, there's the library. But one of the points I made in responding or replying to where the kite lands, I hope that is their channel, I've not checked before I came out, was at the top of Fargate you'll have a view of 5 different streets. So we got up there to Barker's Pool, and that leads on to Division Street and Devonshire Street and Devonshire Green, which is all very student orientated, independent, studenty kind of shops. Again, I don't think we're going to go up there today. That's never been a priority area for shopping in Sheffield historically. That's always been kind of the third shopping street. The first one, as I've said, is Castlegate up to Fargate, up to this point here. And the second one has always been really Pinston Street, past the town hall down to the moor, which we're going to go down there in a bit. And then the third one is that one up there. Now, but going back to the point I was trying to make on the comparison with Leicester, when you're stood in the central square in Leicester, you can see several streets, which makes everything look really bustling because you can see down several streets. Just like here, I can look around, and even though there doesn't appear to be much activity here, not right in front of me, there is up there if I were to zoom in on Barker's Pool. And there's not a lot on Leopold Street. Again, a lot of nighttime economy going over that way. We've just walked through Orchard Square, which is just behind those houses there. And you've seen how busy that is. So the fact that there's not a lot happening there and there's not a lot happening here, but you can see there's a lot of people here and quite a few people coming up Surrey Street and quite a lot of people along Pinston Street, means that 3 out of those 5, hold on, I'm counting right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah, 3 out of those 5 streets are actually busy and bustling. And the fact that you're on one street that doesn't look to be bustling doesn't mean that the city as a whole isn't bustling. So I hope that kind of clears up the point I was trying to make there. And again, just to reaffirm, this is not a film of me going around on a Saturday saying that, look, Sheffield's so busy, it's much busier than Leicester on a Wednesday. That's not the purpose of this video. The purpose of this video is just to point out historically where the main shopping offer is in the city, why it's that way, why historically it's been that way, and why it's important that that continues if Sheffield is to keep its identity and remain viable into the future. We're all about sustainability, but the sustainability works on many levels. It's not just about being environmentally sustainable. It's about being economically sustainable, culturally sustainable. Sustainability is incredibly important, is the default position. And then from that sustainability, you can actually grow, you can innovate, you can change, you can adapt. But you always have to keep that foundation intact if you want to basically create places or keep places that in a way that people enjoy being there and want to be there. So now we're coming onto Pinston Street, and this is the main road down to the moor. So we've got, which I think is one of Sheffield's, one of the best landscape design features of any city, anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world. I'm a huge fan of the Peace Gardens, just as much as I love the Peace Gardens. I despise that. I despise the tower behind it, and I despise all of these bland could be anywhere office blocks, including the ridiculous hotel there. Not a problem with hotels per se, but that building there is ridiculous because it blocks out one of Sheffield's most iconic buildings, which is the Winter Garden. As soon as that's gone and all those are gone, we can actually build a proper development that enhances the city and doesn't just rely on cramming as many people in to keep the place economically viable, the better the city will be. Because if you don't create a place that is somewhere that people want to be and want to spend their life and bring up a family and actually invest their time and their entire life into a place, then you're competing, because you're becoming anywhere place, and you're competing with much better cities who do that anywhere kind of place much better than you ever done, because they've always been an anywhere place. Most American cities are anywhere, could be anywhere places, which is why nobody gives a toss when they or very few people give a toss when they get run down and everybody moves out like they did in Detroit several years ago. Why would you stay there when you have no real connection to the place? So yeah, and the more history that you have, the more you hang on to that heritage, the more you can sell that heritage as part of your economy. It doesn't have to be your whole economy like it might be in somewhere like York, but it can be a big part of your heritage. When you look at old photos of Sheffield, or even film of Sheffield, looking out from kind of Hyde Park area down over the Upper Don Valley, and there are hundreds of chimneys. And of course at the time all these chimneys are polluting, pumping out black smoke, and there's grime everywhere, and there's detritus, and there's all sorts of crap, and it looks horrendous, it looks like hell. But if you could have protected that entire landscape and cleaned it up, you would have something absolutely unique that is nowhere else, that can be found nowhere else in the world. And you would have people coming from all over the world to look at hundreds, if not thousands of acres of hundreds, if not thousands of acres of well-protected, well-preserved industrial landscape along the Upper Don Valley and along the Lower Don Valley. But unfortunately, most of that now is gone. Now again, so we're on Pinston Street now. There is quite a lot of development going on down there. How long have we been? 38 minutes. There's quite a lot of development going on the left. They've knocked some buildings down. Again, they've got this fencing up down there. Just zoom in. But again, historically, if you want to visit the top, shall we say the most posh, the most upmarket department store in Sheffield, there's the car park to John Lewis's, or what became Cole Brothers after it moved from Cole's Corner and then became John Lewis. That's a car park, and the building is facing Barker's Pool on the other side, which again we're not going to go up because I want to walk down straight down the moor. So yeah, so now we're in historically the kind of second tier of shopping offer in the city centre historically. And I think what they wanted to do is to make this up and down here tie in with the new developments here to link you up to Barker's Pool and kind of Division Street, Devonshire Street. That might work. It's not historically been the case. Division Street, Devonshire Street has always been the university area for your trendy students. This has always been your main shopping thoroughfare for your residents. So I'm not sure whether that will work over time. We'll have to wait and see. There's the old Henry's there. And you can see Lots of what I would say is inappropriate development behind it. Some lovely Victoriana here, and then pile of, again, could be anywhere, building behind it. Again, same here. Quite modern. This one I'm not as offended by because it takes the line of that roof, and then the extra floor on top isn't too outlandish, but that is just a ridiculous add-on to these beautiful buildings. So yeah, so there's the is it Cambridge Street Collective over there? So it's kind of Cambridge Street, which has always been a bit of a kind of thoroughfare down to the moor or up to Barker's Pool, but again, lots of nighttime activity as it gives you access to Division Street, Devonshire Street and West Street. And of course, the point that I'm trying to make as well is that when you start to try and reconfigure where your main retail is, these things build up over time organically because there is an economic need for certain shops and certain buildings to be in certain places. If you try and change that and manage that because we want to give a private company management of the moor because then they will take on that finance and all that, and it relieves the council of doing stuff down there, then you start to get rid of that organic reason for a place to be there. So here we have Cambridge Street, which is now partly pedestrianised. Again, more grey to green, which again, generally speaking, I'm in support of. Problem I have with that building now being there is it casts a huge amount of shade. The sun is kind of in the sky all morning over there. So this road now, a lot of the time, is very much in shade. So I'm not quite sure whether that's a good thing. Sheffield has always been a low-rise city and really needs to try and hang on to that as much as possible. That's not to say that you couldn't have, or you can't have, or you shouldn't have some tall buildings, but they have to be positioned very, very carefully. And to be honest with you, anywhere inside the ring road, the inner relief road, as it's more accurately called, for as far as I'm concerned, is a big no-no. With the possible exception of down at the bottom of the moor there. So, we're now coming to the moor. So this now is promoted as being, so we've got H&M, we've got Five Guys, we've got New Look, we've got River Island. Obviously Debenhams, that's a national company that went bust. Nothing the council could do about that. But that's still obviously stood empty, waiting for redevelopment. We've got Primark. Atkinson's is still Sheffield's independent department store. Very well patronised, very well loved. Again, it's about place. Place matters. Being attached to a place matters. That doesn't mean you can't enjoy other parts of the world. It means you are where you were born and where you brought up. That, whether you like it or not, will dictate a lot of your thinking, and so it should. And again, that doesn't mean that you can't then adapt your personality as you get older and take on board more information and learn and expand your horizons, etc. But by the same token, you then just don't throw out all that you've learned while you were growing up in a particular place and the effect that a particular place has had on your life and your upbringing. So we've got Specsavers, got HSBC, got JD Sports, got EE, we've got Popeyes. This is quite new. Now Popeyes here. And we've got Next, got Clark's still, got EE. Now then, I'm gonna go up there when I come back up. But you can see there are a few tiny side streets off here on the moor. Oh God, gonna get a bit noisy. Right, just get away from the noise. Other than these side streets, which basically kind of just lead in from major roads surrounding the moor, you've got major dual carriageways on both sides. You know, there's very little, if any, shops on these side streets. So when you're stood here, compared to when I was stood at the top of the moor, and you look around and you're here on a Wednesday afternoon, obviously we're here on a Saturday, so you can see it really is quite busy, but that's not the point. If you're stood here on a Wednesday afternoon and they say maybe a half or a quarter of what's here, all you can see is what's here. All you can see is what's on this street. You can't see any other street other than this street. So that's why Sheffield tends, although it's not the only reason, you never look at things in a univariant way. That is one of the reasons why Sheffield looks to be empty or struggling when it's not really doing any worse than most other places, given all the negatives that have actually happened in the past, like the creation of one of the country's biggest out-of-town shopping centres just 3 miles down the road at Meadowhall with 12,000 car parking spaces. So we're not going to go into the market because this is the tokenistic, no matter how good it might be, this is the tokenistic replacement for the Castle Market and the Sheaf Market down in the Haymarket area, in the historic fabric of the city. So you can see around, if you look at all the buildings, and again, the moor suffered a lot of bombing in World War II. But you can see how every building here is a could be anywhere kind of building. It isn't attached to its place. It's really a very brutalist, modernist development that again doesn't. If you didn't know you were in Sheffield, you wouldn't know where you were, because there is nothing that shouts Sheffield about the buildings on this street. So yeah, let me just carry on walking down. So this market here, which is now the outdoor moor market. This used to go right up the centre of this street after it was pedestrianised, because again, there used to be transport, buses, trams coming right up and down here. But the market, once it was pedestrianised, used to be right up to the top of the moor, to where I crossed the road from Pinston Street. So you can see what a tokenistic thing it is now, because of course they want people in there, they want units in there, which you can get more rent from. So let's just have a look at these, see what kind of tat is being sold on this market. Now I must admit, when they put the Christmas market on, it is more impressive. It is much, much better when the Christmas market's on. So, as I come down to the bottom of the moor, here, got Sports Direct there. Got another Greggs there. Is that 3 or 4 Greggs in the city centre? Subway. Where I've walked now is the main shopping thoroughfare. This is the south of the city. This is the southern end of Sheffield city centre. So if you live in the south of the city historically and you travel in by public transport, or even by your own transport if you're coming in by car to visit, because the south of the city is much more wealthy than the north of the city, and therefore you might want to shop at John Lewis's, you would get off a bus here, and this will be where you shopped, at the market, at the outdoor market here, or in all the shops that align the side of the street here. That, the old horrendous Manpower Services Commission building, which they're going to do up and provide flats. The moor was never the same. That actually closed off a main connection, main public walking connection between the south of the city and the city centre. In fact, London Road, Aberdale Road is at the other side of that horrendous building. So now you have to come round it, either side, if you're walking to access the moor. Major mistake, and unfortunately they're keeping that building and building more. Absolutely could be anywhere, boring, cheap apartments again in this area with a bit of tokenistic open space that will probably look all right for 2 or 3 years, if that, and then we'll be left to go to pot. It really is quite depressing being in Sheffield, living in Sheffield, wanting to see the place objectively improve, and it not doing so after living here for 60 years. In fact, if anything, it's just got worse and worse and worse. Not across the board, not completely. As I've said before, I'm a big fan of the Greater Green. I'm a big fan of the actual Peace Gardens area itself, the actual landscape in there. Same down by the railway station, and again down by Victoria Quays with the Greater Green down there is absolutely fantastic. But I'm also not ashamed to call out bullshit, to call out crap, to call out cheapness when that's clearly what is happening. So I said I was going to walk back up through that complex, but I don't think I will actually. This video's now gone on for 53 minutes. So so basically what I want people to take away from this video, obviously also the lovely couple who run the YouTube channel Where the Kites Land, is if you're going to assess the vibrancy of an area, stay on the main shopping thoroughfare. Understand where that is. Try and do a little bit of research beforehand as to why the place is like it is. But there's a football match on today as well. Sheffield United are playing. Bramall Lane's just down there. And understand that you know the only place that is going to be busy in your city centre, generally speaking, is where all the shops are. Any side street, other than people accessing the shops, or if they're just going to an office building or whatever, is going to be, in any major big city, is going to be not very well patronised. So I think I'm going to leave that there now. Because I need the toilet as well. And the toilet's in the in the markets there. So I hope I've made my point clear. There's a lot of information there that I've really just gone through completely unscripted, just talking as I see things. So yeah, so I'll say thank you for listening, thank you for subscribing if you have done, and bye for now. Bye for now.